Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to a webinar um, reflecting on 2020 in accounting education. And I'm Judith from Accounting Pod. I'm a co-founder of Accounting Pod, an education technology company, and I'm pleased to be joined today by uh, three panelists spread across the region, and none of us affected by the earthquakes we've had today in New Zealand as yet. Helen, would you like to kick off and introduce yourself?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you, Judith, for inviting me to be part of your panel today. So I'm an associate professor in finance at the University of Otago, and I've been involved with Accounting Pod for at least 5 years now. So we use it in our Master of Entrepreneurship program. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Suresh.
Yes, I am what is best called an academic practitioner. I'm a director of a company called Brain Value and focus on behavioral finance and accountancy. And I've had the opportunity in 2020 probably now to develop 5 machine learning courses for various institutions. So I do spend my time between developing new courses, innovative courses I hope, as well as practice.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Suresh. And we've got to know Suresh over the years.
Yes.
As well as we've come to different conferences. I can't actually remember how we first met you. I think it might have been through Chartered Accountants. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
that's right, where I was their data scientist for quite a while. Yep.
All right. Yes, so it's very nice to have you and have your perspective.
Thanks very much.
Wei, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. This is Wei Shi. Thanks a lot for the invitation to the webinar. I'm the lecturer of accounting in Deakin University, and I have been involved in accounting board for about 2 years, and it has been a fun experience using that kind of platform to teach students, and we used it intensively in the undergraduate study.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Wei. So I really look forward to hearing the comments from everyone today as we reflect on 2020, a year that's just, I would say, zoomed by, pardon the pun, and then that's because I guess there's been a lot of change. So I'd like to start now with our questions. And those attendees that have joined us today, we'd be very happy if you would like to leave your questions via the Q&A or alternatively via chat as well. And I think one of my colleagues will pick up and help manage the Q&A if it becomes a bit overwhelming. So let's kick off and start again with you, Helen. The biggest challenges faced in 2020?
So I guess the onset of COVID-19 and the pace at which we had to quickly adjust from a face-to-face teaching environment into a virtual teaching mode. A lot of my colleagues had never used Zoom, hadn't used a lot of technology directly attached to the web in the classroom before, and literally 24 hours packing up our office, moving furniture and screens, everything out of the business school and into our home environment, and having to build a virtual classroom and engage our students, not just for 1 week or 2 weeks, but for an extended period of time, and then trying to maintain connection with them, either through live Zoom sessions or recording Zoom teaching sessions, and then trying to follow up through other ways of communication, again, not face-to-face. So very, very hard.
And beyond COVID, Helen, were there other things you saw in 2020 beyond just COVID?
Right. So I think the transition away from a traditional learning environment and the way the education sector has had to adjust to using technology, and realizing that there are actually a lot of different ways that you can reach students using technology, and actually the ability to be more efficient, in fact, teaching in a medium that's probably not a normal practice.
Suresh, do you have some thoughts on 2020?
Yeah, so I'm going to assume tick all the boxes that any other speaker might talk directly about COVID impacts and online learning. I move to one major issue that I think the region, Australia, New Zealand, will suffer from in years to come, and already being asked by companies and some university departments, is the forthcoming talent shortage. Because think about it now, our international students are off somewhere else, particularly the capstone students that we're working with, or the last year. And I often run some projects with accountancy students as well, from an industry perspective. And we've actually got a shortage. We've got, first time ever, more projects that need assistance with than basically we've ever had before. Requirements before just chasing around for them. So I think for me the biggie is what is now going to be a massive talent shortage, and we've yet to discuss obviously what that future accountant professional represents, but I think that's one issue. And the other issue is essentially through this time frame we were expecting audit to change. There's been a few government regulatory inquiries on audit, and I'll call it the new audit. UK reported last year, eventually Australian government got its report out, and then we had the Wirecard fiasco, which some of us probably have used either in the classroom or online for training. And so we're about due for audit, but I think all of that, the challenge is we've had to let it slip into this year now as to how we rejuvenate and get students interested again with some very interesting case studies, including COVID. Yeah.
So, Suresh, could I just get you to tease out just that comment, audit and the Wirecard for our New Zealand audience?
Sure,
because I
sure.
think...
Sure. So Wirecard is a worldwide, a well-known payment system, and increasingly more and more focus on payment systems. And just as an aside, if you're an accountant or a professional practice, you actually will be the key person or gatekeeper, effectively, once you slot in open banking and payments. Now, in the case of Wirecard, essentially, there was a $2 billion missing hole. Now, why I love this one as a case study, dare I say, firstly, the company got listed into the German DAX itself and became so big it was thinking of taking over Deutsche Bank. But lo and behold, meanwhile in the Philippines, there was a role play, an actual bank branch opened, 2 auditors to come and visit. And so it's a very colorful story that happens to be real now. And of a $2 billion fraud. And what it really questions is inflated revenues and transaction volume. And that was missed very fundamentally in the audit itself. And so I think it's a back to basics as well as looking at new sources. So a $2 billion black hole in a company that was audited by the same professionals for the last 10 years. I think a great case study for existing professionals and students, and happy if we have a session on just Wirecard alone, because I do get excited about it, because it's all about human behavior. And that's the aspect that to some extent is very exciting about the profession as well, going forward.
I can hear you getting excited, and I'd love to make a further comment on that. I'm taking a couple of notes, but I'd like to pause and ask Wei to come in now and give us his biggest challenges faced in 2020. Wei.
Thanks to this. The biggest challenge for me is, I was teaching during 2020. I can see that from students or even the instructor perspective, we got a lot of mental health issues. In
Ah,
terms of loss of motivation, you can see there's some delays in the student submissions, or they're simply less engaged in their study, mainly because of the COVID-19, as pointed out by Helen and Suresh. We experienced the economic downturn. We also have those kind of travel restrictions, and in Victoria we have several months lockdowns. So those has caused a lot of mental issues, in the students as well as for the faculties here. And this kind of issue has posed a challenge for instructors to motivate the students. And also, besides the mental health issues, we also have some time management skills that need to be strengthened, within the students and also the instructors, because we have a lot of Zoom meetings. They simply, it offers some flexibility in terms of you don't have to physically attend those lectures, but then you got a lot of virtual events. Sometimes you might get tired of that. So from the educator perspective, that's what I see as the biggest challenge in 2020.
Thanks for that, everyone. I just comment on that observation about the virtual events and getting tired. Wei, I sat in on a webinar with out of EduGrowth, and there was one of the presenters was from Sydney University, I believe, and basically she put up the lecture theatre. Everyone was supposed to be back, I think, but there was no one in the theatre. Absolutely no one. So clearly there have been impacts on attendance as well as you've opened up. And so I imagine that there's a flow-on effect to accounting education, how it's presented to come. Yes, so that was my comment. And then I was just thinking, Suresh, and I'd love to get back to this point about your comment about accountants are actually key gatekeepers in the environment now, and that's something I speak to when I'm talking about the cloud or online business ecosystem and how it's connecting and growing and is able to connect at the speed of thought, and making the comment that we have observed these platforms which businesses are using, and indeed Accounting Pod plugs into the likes of Xero, the cloud platform used very much by businesses in Australia, and how that is a robot, and how within that robot you will see suggestions. And so the experience, I'm going to assure you, Suresh, that we are getting students experiencing those suggestions, and we are working with the academic team so that they are understanding those tools as well, and seeing how those inferring those recommendations for payment gateways are great discussion points across the curriculum. And so yes, very much so, and I have hands-on experience with suggestion from the platform and a perverse outcome for the business that I've shared in the past. So very, very interesting times. I would like therefore to ask, what then, in light of those things that you have just shared, what strategies did work well and what didn't? Thank you. Wei, maybe we'll start with you on that question. In response to those challenges you identified, what did and didn't work? Thank you.
Well, what worked well are mainly 2 points. The first one is I try to do a one-to-one catch-up with the students who show lower progress in their study. So Deakin got a very good digital learning platform. We have the Cloud Deakin, and we can easily see the students who are kind of left behind. So we can reach out to figure out, is there any supports that are needed. So this really works well. I mean, the students appreciate the support, and they want to share their concerns so that the corresponding support can be provided. The second thing that works well is, of course, and always, we use the accounting pod, which, the students feel really engaging. I mean, they try to learn something, or prepare themselves for the digital age, and then kind of use of Xero actually helps them, know how to, digitally, bookkeep those transactions. And that's probably one of the few things that they enjoy, during the lockdown, they can play with the online platform. And actually, I also noticed that, I also mentioned that to students, the Xero stock price actually almost tripled, during the lockdown period. So that indicates the popularity of that one, which actually motivates the students to learn more about how to use this kind of digital platform for their future business or career. So those are the two things that work really well during the 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely there's something, work not so well. So those are mainly like, we might need to think about how to transform our assessment task in terms of how to assess the students' learning to make it more engaging, basically. So we tend to, when we do the physical teaching, we tend to give them a lot of written assessment tasks, but it's the time for to think about whether we can give them more like data-based platform, like some we know that there are some simulated platform like Xero or other or simulated environment that give the students, like the student can be the virtual like employee in that virtual organization, so they know the function of the organization. It's just to give them a little bit fun so that they can get more motivated in terms of learning. That's my personal thought on that.
Well, you've certainly put out a challenge to me, Wei, about, and I think in this case, gamification, more engaging gamification across the case studies that we can then assess across. I have heard that I've seen a few webinars, interest groups talking around this area of assessment and the evolution of assessment with the new environment. And I truly believe you raise a very valid point there, and it does remind me of the number of times I've been told that students think accounting is boring, and I can say, 2 minutes with myself or Suresh, we're going to change your mind on that. And if you'd want to talk to Helen about finance and share prices and compensation, you can just see the passion shining out. And so it's actually really great to hear that perspective there. And follow on from that, Helen, would you like to just make a comment therefore about how you helped to address these challenges you saw?
So I think in my case, I had one class, quite a big class, 87 students, and I also had the entrepreneurship program running at the same time. And what would happen in class would often be very interactive. So I would pose a question, let the students work collaboratively on finding a solution, either with programs on their own devices, or possibly just applying theory. And that's very hard to do in a virtual environment, but one way around that was to engage with software such as Accounting Pod, bring Xero Learning into that environment, which again transitions the learning away from just the concept, but actually enjoying what you're doing, and through that you learn. To bring it to life, I also had a plug-in document camera. So that allowed me to show line by line what was going on to students, and again explain concepts that you can't really understand just through a verbal description. So again, the idea of trying to bring things to life in a way that is interesting, but also has meaning in terms of your actual learning outcomes. And I think one challenge that I'm still grappling with is online groups. I managed to get my students to form online groups and engage really effectively online. However, the presentation was the area, the assessment of the presentation was the area that I felt was compromised because of the virtual presence rather than in a face-to-face situation. So students probably didn't prepare to present, they really just had notes that they read from, when in class that would have been different. So how to overcome that, I don't know. In the entrepreneurship class, we were able to do stock pitches through Accounting Pod with you. So students were engaging, I think, more realistically in that virtual environment than they were when they had their group presentations from my own class experience.
Yeah, picking up on that point, you're right. We put in a question for the entrepreneur. We focus on finance for entrepreneurs, basically the applied portion, accounting and finance, we did put a question in where we can take an audio, which they can do on their phone, of their entrepreneurial idea pitch. And we set a bit of criteria, and we have opportunity to build on the information to help them to prepare. And the good thing is they can record it a lot of times, can't they, until they're really happy with it. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I think we're still discovering, and I think that's what's exciting, still discovering what could work. And it's really good to hear how the institution, the universities, come to the party with equipment that you need as well. I mean, that's really great to hear too.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So Suresh, coming back to what you were excited about, and what that challenge was. So your thoughts on how you maybe have done something to help address, or further thoughts.
Yeah, so as you know, for some time, I certainly have focused on some of the tools like Power BI, spreadsheets, and it's great to see the work being done by Accounting Pod. So this was very interesting, because what happened in 2020 was almost every accounting practice and part-time student that I was dealing with was suddenly overwhelmed because of JobKeeper reporting and so on. If you look at the SME practices, particularly out in Western Sydney, 2 or 3 of them were just overwhelmed, because all of a sudden these SMEs that were never interested in analytics, and I'm not saying reporting is analytics, and we'll discuss that later, but they were just overwhelmed. So students that had Power BI expertise or any tool expertise were working very hard, and they found themselves actually advising clients. So one student that I worked with, a master's student, used to sit in the back office, and basically was the classic spreadsheet jockey. And all of a sudden, he was sharing with the class that he was now able to work with clients, new clients, and he loved the communication and soft skills aspects. Wasn't necessarily up to speed with all of that, but I think it just shows in a micro fashion a good thing that's come out of COVID. The fact that we were beginning to train students on different tools. Reporting clearly is not the most advanced of analytics, but it had a government need. It helped businesses that may have gone out of business otherwise. And actually, I remember the same student asked for advice on a business canvas, which I'm sure Helen and yourself are certainly familiar with. And I asked why, and apparently it was a takeout business, sorry, it was a cafe that pivoted their business to supply picnic hampers. And then all of a sudden they went online and they were doing far more business than ever before. And then the interest of the student to become much more entrepreneurial, COVID took us to those places. It moved the silos, the back office, student style resources, and allowed them. And Helen's nodding there, and I think she might have some great stories as well. So all this Uber food, Uber Eats, all of that, to some extent, even though the margins might be small for the businesses, some of them got catapulted from a situation where they thought they would have just gone under and gone home. So I think that's certainly one aspect that I saw. On the other side, what didn't work well, and I think it may have been also, I won't say it was myself, but I think a number of associates I've done work with, both in academia and practice, were entirely fed up, did not want to see any case studies on COVID. And I'm very disappointed still, because I wrote some case studies and I thought they would be great in class. And my companions told me, no, everyone's sick of COVID. So I'm going to keep them, because I think what COVID's taught businesses, things like the pivot example I've given, is that you never know of the next black swan, and you have to be ready, and you have to be ready to weather the storm. So I still may pull out those case studies, but I do not believe, and I'm yet to see many courses that actually formally assess students on a COVID case study. But I hope I've answered your question, by the way. I'm not.
I think you have.
Yeah.
And I think you've laid down another challenge for Accounting Pod, because as you know, we focus on,
Sure.
we do focus on providing these case studies. And
Exactly.
thinking about how to, where we are able to develop that content further, if the curriculum allows, what we can actually do. And it is very, very exciting. And yes, you just never know, Suresh.
Okay.
There might be a request coming back.
Okay.
COVID case study. And I definitely endorse from the practice side, since I am involved in public practice in New Zealand. And over here we had the COVID, it was the COVID wage subsidy, yours JobKeeper, exactly the same thing, a huge amount of pressure on the team to deal with all the inquiries, because money was very much the motivator. Cash was became absolute, and I sit in a tourism region, so particularly affected ongoing. So yes, I do feel that these COVID case studies have a lot to teach us going forward. Both sides of them, one like Zoom, the platform we're sitting on, and with the big security breach, and of course those that have had to make the very hard decisions around closing or hibernation, or just lost their whole business and their cash cycle. And basically now see themselves in liquidation. So yes, there's been a lot of change. Can I move on now? The things that you are doing today to make 2021 a better year. So kind of the learnings, and I think, Suresh, you've shared a few of these already, the learnings from this 2020 period and what you are doing now, how you're doing this, to create these new opportunities, or maybe you've got some things on your roadmap you'd like to share as well. So Suresh, would you like to kick us off with that third question?
Yeah, I think this is a logical step for many of us, that predictive and prescriptive analytics is just taking too long. It was taking too long to get into the classroom for some. and it was taking too long to get into practice. I worked on a ACCA CA ANZ study last year, in fact, on analytics in finance and accountancy. Spoke to a number of global CFOs, government departments in New Zealand and so forth. And I'm here to tell you, literally no one was focused on predictive or prescriptive. Now, we could say it was COVID, but that was, I think already prior to that, I had witnessed almost not a lack of interest, but certainly a lack of take-up. So I think the one thing for this year, in order to make better, it gives us interesting case studies as well, is focusing on predictive and prescriptive, going beyond traditional data, non-financial information, so we can use this to help us predict in some ways. Mm-hmm. And then to throw into the pot that non-financial information includes ESG, the environmental, social and governance. And I think in 2021, we have to focus on, in a forward-looking fashion, on different data types and predictive and prescriptive. Otherwise, those companies that don't will lose it. You know, whatever they've managed to save during COVID, they will miss the advantage. So there will be companies that are going to come out with great growth and opportunities, and those will be forward-looking companies. And I'm trying to contribute to that in writing, in teaching, as well as in projects that I'm working on with clients. Mm-hmm. So I hope, so different data types, forward-looking is really what it's about. And that also sends a good signal to existing students who are maybe contemplating and not sure if they are wanting to continue with accounting.
Yeah. And I think adding to that, Suresh, and my example here is our tourism industry in both countries, devastated. And I had always thought that the collaboration across what is essentially a huge cluster of small operators, the way data is shared across and how it is organised by bodies, contributing bodies, including government, who could really help. It's not organised in a uniform way, and I can see some real heat coming on those bodies that were representing in that industry or responsible as ministries in the industry about how to better support with common data and share that common data, and the way that data has been locked up in silos, making it very difficult for what is largely an SMB sector to decision make and forecast easily, therefore be predictive. So the conversation you are having is absolutely relevant for those particularly many, you know. It's like a one-to-many, right, kind of model. It's a many model in that particular sector as opposed to the very large players. So,
and there's an example in front of us, open banking APIs across the world. That would be one that I think you could take to tourism authorities and say, look, it's happening, maybe a bit slowly, but in some countries like the UK, faster than Australia. But I think that's a good example to actually give them and say, you need to adopt an open approach to tourism, much like now the banks are having to do this as well.
Yeah, we could get into that because we have seen some of these businesses online that during COVID provided their platforms for free and are now talking about maybe continuing that model, but have looked to build their business case on something entirely outside of what that platform was doing. So a great example is Salesforce, who are requiring use of their, I think it's their like billing system or something that actually allows them to pick up the payment gateway charge, which of course some of these businesses were paying $3.5 up to 4%, so maybe it was
Yeah.
higher. I saw that certainly. And that was being lost on every sale, of course. And so now you're being pushed
Right.
through a portal. And here we come back to the power of the robots, right?
Right.
Working with them and the power that they can wield. Wei, would you like to make a comment? The things you're doing today to make 2021 a better year from what you've learned in 2020.
Yeah, thanks, Judith. I can't agree more with Suresh in emphasizing the importance of predicting. I mean, the predictive analysis. So even, at the personal level, I would say to make 2021 a better year, we should be prepared. So prepared for, in terms of both mentally, physically, or even analytically. So physically, definitely we need to take care of ourselves, try to, stay well. So mentally, we need to be more resilient. So I guess most of people go through those pandemic, get that kind of resilience to, prepare for another uncertain year, I guess, in 2021. Analytically, I told students, definitely the future for accounting students, data analytics is the future for most of the accounting students. It's not simply about reporting. The more important issue is about making decisions to become, a consultant within the organization. So, we shall be prepared for that. And then as the instructor, I'm trying my best to come up with either case studies or other assessment tasks to make their journey to the analytics more engaging. Yeah.
Yes, very interesting. And I was thinking on your physical comment, Boris Johnson, of course, he's picked up the challenge of that after his exposure to COVID. So yeah, it's really interesting. And you do see as a business advisor, with the CA hat on, that you do get involved in that whole range of challenges that a business faces because you are kind of, a cornerstone piece of that team in many ways. Helen, what are you thinking on this topic, the things we're doing better?
Yeah, sure. So I think overall well-being of students, absolutely, and that's really come to the fore in the last 12 months, and that means trying to check in with students, regular small bite, interviews using web-based applications, giving them small assessments where you can quickly send feedback, assurance, and then guidance, and also gearing them more towards the analytical and the customer facing skills that they are increasingly going to need in the workplace, and advising them early on in their career path planning to think about what the role of an accountant is going to look like as a financial consultant in the business world, what are the kinds of tasks your employer are going to be asking you to do, and how you can skill yourself while you're at university so that when you are graduating, you're not going out into a world where you have very little knowledge of what's really expected of you. So really shifting the content of our courses to use more analytical skills, learning how to program, to manage large amounts of data effectively and extract information from that, and then be able to use it strategically when you are advising and giving students projects that will help them to build those key skills. And working, closely with the professional bodies as well, seeing where they're going and understanding the dynamic nature of business and how it's changing and what business professionals need to be able to do in order to enhance businesses as they grow.
That's good insight, and it's helped to wrap the Suresh and Wei comments together as well, Helen. Can I therefore flow you on to our final question? Sure. In light of all this, what would be your magic wand or wishes for 20? For now, for looking forward, for looking in a predictive way.
Yeah. So as an educator, being able to come up with tools that are constantly drawing on real life experience. You know, I think of if we can go and if you look at the foreign exchange market, you know, any time of the day or night, you can see the value of the currency constantly changing. And that's just a reminder of the information that is being generated from businesses day in, day out. And I think, you know, Xero now, a business owner with a small account, small business account, you know, $25, $30 a month can quickly tell me in a matter of seconds where their revenue stream is at any real point in time, and the value of that and how important that is in terms of the role of an accountant as a financial advisor, and using that information for the best application that the business needs. And I think for too long we've thought about only reporting. So looking at learning tools that will help students to develop those advisory skills that they will need more and more in the workplace. And they have to be tools that are interactive, that are engaging, that possibly involve some kind of gamification that's going to help them stay connected to learning platforms where we often are talking to people via machines rather than face-to-face.
Yes, interesting. And I was thinking that beyond that non-financial arena,
Yes.
I remember getting so excited when that farm agri business program released, Figured On Farm, Helen, a New Zealand startup. Not, you know, it's gone a long way down the track now, but I remember for the first time the biological assets could be kept up to date in real time, and the forward budgets and forecasts were able to be interchanged between the accounting platform, and those businesses were for the first time able to predict their profitability.
Right.
Because they never had that information, because the biological assets were never tracked on a daily basis. But now with all the tagging technology and the connections and the satellites around the farm and the, you know, all the things on the gate posts, you know, they're able to get this huge real-time data map across the sectors, and we're seeing that really being rolled out. So it's so exciting to be working there. And you're absolutely right. Those are the skills, the knowledge, the breadth of business that the students are going to be walking into as to how that data works across the board. Wei, some comment on your thoughts about what you would like, magic wand and wishes.
Well, my personal wishes would be like life will be back to normal. We can get a safe and effective vaccine and international travel open. But in the education arena, I would say embrace the change. The change is the changing role of accountant. As educator, we shall be prepared, and students, we also shall be prepared for that kind of change. Actually, there have been a lot of discussion for the changing role of accountant in the future. It's simply the pandemic accelerates that kind of shift. So we hopefully, you know, in the future, in the near future, we can, you know, enjoy that kind of change and you know, just adapt to that kind of changing role for accountants.
Suresh, your
yeah, so I think my wish is actually much more structural, and that is that I wish that organizations and universities and public sector embrace much more strategy and innovation. And the way I've seen it work, for instance, I do some work with private institutions like Torrance or Laureate, and they actually have a structure that is responsible for strategy and innovation. So the 5 machine learning courses I talked about for professionals, as well as youngsters, that was sanctioned by the innovation team. Now, but I'd like to take it further. I'd like to see information flows, including almost the foreign exchange type indicator, but for jobs. the type of new jobs emerging. So what Helen said, using that analogy and metaphor, because if I'm teaching in the uni or doing research in the institution or even in practice, you don't get that kind of visibility. So I think there's an opportunity, particularly for universities, they could act as a role model, have a new team, strategy and innovation, assist individuals like myself, Wei, and others, let us not spend enormous time doing the market research, etc. Help us do that, give us the information flows, and that could even be used as an interesting decision center to teach our next generation of accountancy students and so forth, or accountants. So that's my wish, some structural change that will, because I haven't found it to work any other way. Getting a new course or new curriculum is always, hopefully Helen will support me on this, a labor of love. You don't get, the reward you get is the student happy and they go off and find a new job. Maybe that's reward enough, but yeah. So that's my wish.
Yeah, and I think accounting has been taught too traditionally for too long.
You're absolutely right.
It really needs a big mind shift, because
Yes.
you're actually losing, it is no longer an attractive career.
Yep.
Just because students don't see the job path, and secondly, it's been taught the same way for too long.
Absolutely. I'm glad you've, yeah. So now we call it entrepreneurial accounting. And everyone will jump in. Yeah, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
Right. And they can be their own accountant,
Exactly.
Well, you've challenged me again as well. I'm going to be looking for some closing comments in a moment, but I must say I got very excited when here in New Zealand, this is a magic wand wish, one of business leaders, it was the founder of Xero, actually came out and said, we need a CTO of New Zealand. And it didn't, for various reasons, didn't become a goer, but definitely a coordinated approach. We've certainly had huge levels of frustration with some of the tech platforms that have been put out there by government during COVID that is causing stress and challenge. And in terms of value, you talked, Suresh, about the skills, you started off with the comment about a skills shortage. If we don't design smart platforms to deliver the solutions that meet today's needs, and we just create more time being spent trying to do things on these online platforms. In other words, good design, user experience, thinking about security, thinking about privacy, as it all comes together, then we're just going to soak up your the skills you do have, time. And I've got some examples of that. I'd probably say, I've spent the same amount of time trying to get a solution organised as I would to actually do the work for that. In this case, I was talking about some grants. It's not making sense. We have to figure out how we take a coordinated, innovative approach and standard to our technology across the board. And I wonder whether I saw there was a webinar last week from AICPA, and the two questions were around technology competency, building that competency for students and discussing how it was being done and what was planned and what was going to be done about it. So my magic wand is to start to unpick some of these things I would like to see and really think about how we can help to ramp up that acquisition, Suresh, that you're looking to see as well. I think accounting's exciting, even if it's called business or it's called entrepreneurial accounting. There's so much going on. So that's wonderful. Just some closing thoughts here. it would be great to hear from you. I'll start, sorry, closing.
So,
I'll start with Wei. Where you go.
Well, so yeah, so let's be prepared. So be resilient, and yeah, for the future. Yeah, yeah.
That's good advice. Helen.
Yeah, I think it's really about getting our students excited to understand how accountants in the future and now are using information that's already available more effectively. It's no longer about recording and reporting. You know, Xero has shown us that can happen automatically. It's really how we use that information in a way that's dynamic, it's diverse, it's relevant, and it's effective in making change. So managing businesses with forward-looking plans. So I think of your agri case, even an entrepreneur who's selling from home, how you take the information from those sales data and use it effectively to strategically design where the business is going in the future. You know, supply, demand, customer base, market share, all of that is very, very relevant and exciting. And that's where I see the future of accounting. And we need to partner with providers of skill sets and technologies that will enable these students to effectively address those challenges.
Thank you, Helen. Yes. Suresh.
Yeah, so look, I really see after COVID a renaissance of the accounting profession. And everything we tend to articulate, we look at like the accountant will provide financial advice and so on. I think there's another way to look at it if we step back, which is it's a convergence of accounting, banking, data, AI, finance, because when did you last meet with a bank manager? They don't exist anymore. And I think if we look at this as a renaissance, where, and maybe gatekeeper is not the right word I used a lot earlier, but I'm saying who else but to turn to your accountant to go from payments all the way through to your receivables and some of the predictive aspects Helen's talked about. So it's a convergence. It's a bashing together of a number of fields. And for those students that don't want to join the risky world of investment banking, they are going to get a slice of banking anyway, whether they like it or not. And the AI is being built into these applications we're talking about more and more. And students really should learn, and I guess us as educators, to be much more self-driven. We go and find these exciting applications, learn about them, and share that learning. So it's in a new form. And I think, yeah, maybe we've got an image problem just by the label accounting, and we need to think about changing that. But that's so it's about students being self-driven, educators, but not thinking about this anymore as accounting.
I can endorse a conversation I had in 2019, Suresh.
Right.
With the same, and I was in the US, same groups of educators. It was an AIS conference,
right?
Accounting Information Systems, and the comments coming through there was, yes, we're acknowledging that we're going to relabel our accounting courses and we're going to call them business, but they, as a particular group, were saying that it had been 5 years since they'd really had a textbook that was keeping up with what they were trying to achieve. And it was a very broad conversation. I can assure you, across this convergence that you are you are hoping for there. And so there is hope. There are people doing these things, and I believe, like you, it is very exciting times to be involved in accounting and business across the board. I say that this has been a wonderful session. Thank you so much all for sharing your thoughts. I haven't seen a question here that's been pushed towards me, but I'm feeling like we've covered quite a lot of ground, and we have raised a number of question marks around our future and current practice, and also our future, and I would love to unpick those further. So those listening in here today, we would be very happy to receive your thoughts on further discussion topics and challenges for us across the board as academic lecturers and teachers within accounting education, future thinkers and designers of that experience as well. The many hats I think that the teaching cohort in our industry are now having to wear. And so I thank you all for your perseverance during this time. I have understood it's been a challenging time, but I see the future as very, very exciting. The challenge to continue, but very exciting in our industry to address what we need to do to help the world. The world, I think it is. Suresh, we're well placed here, aren't we, in Australasia with our ethical frameworks. We're very well placed to help. So as I say, I will wrap it up now. If the panel have any final questions they would like to ask, otherwise I will wrap up the recording and session today and thank the attendees and the panelists for joining us.
Thank you so much, Judith. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
And thank you, Suresh. And I have had someone come, AJ, a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to into the future, and a lot to look into for the future of accounting. So yes, I think this discussion has resonated today. Yes, so thank you very much, everyone. All right. Enjoy your weekend now and stay safe wherever you may be. Mate wa from Air New Zealand.
Okay. See you, Wei. See you, Helen.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you, Helen. See you,
Thank
Suresh.
you,
See you,
everyone.
Judith.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.